Halloween 2015 was quite an eventful night, and it all began with my buddy Brad and me getting ready for a party. For privacy's sake, I'll just refer to my friend as Brad. We were both invited to a Halloween party, and the girl he was dating was joining us. I decided to dress up as a dead construction worker, while Brad went as Maverick from Top Gun. To be honest, we both looked pretty ridiculous because we didn't put too much effort into our costumes. Brad was excited to see his new date, and I was equally excited about the prospect of mingling and flirting with some girls at the party. Once we were both all dolled up and ready to go, we set off. Brad's new girl had sent us the party's address, and we followed the GPS to our destination. Brad drove us there, and it turned out to be quite a journey, about 30 miles away on the outskirts of our city, way out in the country. We cruised down a dark, lampless road that felt like it stretched forever until we finally reached our destination. The party house was nestled at the end of a long driveway, and when we pulled up, we noticed a substantial number of cars and trucks parked out front, around 20 or so. We were both pretty stoked because the party looked amazing. Music was blaring from inside, and the exterior was illuminated with black lights, Halloween decorations, and eerie red lighting seeping out of the windows. This was a 2-story house surrounded by vast farmland. There wasn't another house in sight. We made our way inside, where we found Brad's girl sitting on a couch in the living room, engaged in a conversation with 2 masked individuals. Brad and I took a seat and exchanged greetings with his girl. She was dressed as a vampire. The 2 people she was talking to were masked as well, a guy and a girl. The girl had on a ghost face mask, while the guy sported one of those unsettling black blank face masks. We all engaged in conversation for a while. People were bustling around, dancing and enjoying themselves. However, the guy with the blank face mask struck me as somewhat odd. He was remarkably quiet, only speaking when spoken to. I couldn't help but find him a bit creepy, and it seemed like he wasn't having a good time. We figured the 2 must have come together. But then we found out that the ghost-faced girl had arrived with 2 other girls, and the guy said he had come with his friend, who he couldn't locate. As the night wore on, and after a few hours of chatting, laughing, and having a few drinks, my vision became a bit blurry, and I was undoubtedly getting quite drunk. Brad and his date wandered off somewhere, and the other 2 partygoers were still deep in conversation on the couch next to me, seemingly having a great time. At this point, I was just people watching and sipping on my 5th mixed drink, a good old Jack and Coke. What caught my attention was the guy with the blank face mask. He kept tilting his head back, and I could swear he was glancing upstairs at the bedroom doors. His mask concealed his eyes, making it hard to discern his intentions. Curiously, the ghost-faced girl appeared oblivious to his actions. She was all over him, chatting animatedly. Eventually, I placed one of the couch pillows behind my head and started to doze off, drifting in and out of consciousness. For a brief moment, I woke up, completely disoriented. The room was spinning, and I noticed fewer people moving about. I took my phone out and checked the time. It was 3:45 a.m. Feeling woozy, I stashed my phone back into my pocket and leaned my head back on the pillow, closing my eyes. However, right before drifting off, something caught my attention. The guy with the blank face mask was now guiding the ghost-faced girl up the stairs. Her head was drooping, and she seemed barely awake, presumably quite inebriated. He was supporting her as they ascended the steps, disappearing into one of the bedrooms. The next thing I knew, Brad was shaking me, voicing his desire to leave. I asked him if he was fit to drive, and he assured me he was. I got to my feet, but the room spun, and I felt like I might vomit right there. Nevertheless, I managed to make it outside. The sun had just risen as we returned to Brad's place, both of us collapsing on his couches and passing out. Several hours later, I awoke to the sound of Brad's sister waking him up and inquiring about our night. She asked if we had attended the party out in the countryside, and Brad confirmed that we had. His sister was frantic and revealed the horrifying news. Someone was murdered at that very party the previous night. I was now wide awake, and Brad anxiously pressed for details. His sister didn't yet know the victim's name, but but she informed us that a girl had been discovered murdered in an upstairs bedroom, having suffered 36 stab wounds. Incredibly, to my shock, the victim turned out to be the Ghostface girl. To aid the investigation, the police questioned everyone who had attended the Halloween party, including Brad and me. I quickly recounted the peculiar actions of the man in the black blank face mask, explaining how he had brought the victim upstairs. He was wearing blue jeans, a black t-shirt, and the eerie mask. As far as I know, they never managed to locate that mysterious guy, and the host of the party confirmed that she had never invited or even seen anyone wearing a black blank face mask. It was a truly chilling and unforgettable Halloween night in 2015. When I was young, I visited that one house in our town where the residents went all out for Halloween. They must have spent thousands of dollars to make it perfect, and it was incredibly well done. I mean, it could compete with professional haunted houses. This was around 1999 or 2000, and I had dressed up as Darth Maul. Despite being a bit older, I was still pretty scared, hoping my badass character would give me some courage. The house was a true Halloween spectacle, with a blacktop entrance and everything you'd expect in a haunted house. A psycho shower scene, zombies crawling out of toilets, ghouls, imps, and a whole lot of blood, gore, strobes, and fog. It was terrifying, even with my double lightsaber, but I also admired the hard work that went into creating these props. Every year, I'd see the house owners sitting on their porch, enjoying the fright they brought to the neighborhood and handing out candy. So, on this particular Halloween, I nervously ventured into the yard, passing flying banshees and impaled corpses. At the end of the yard, there was the main attraction, the bottomless pit. It was an illusion that puzzled and chilled me. It was only lit by a single light bulb, but it made the pit look like a fiery furnace. As I gazed at the pit, I heard a cough and a low, hushed voice to my right. I couldn't quite make out what was said, but it was something like, "Hey, check this out," or "Hey, I want to show you something." It was in a gruff and hoarse tone. I turned to look, and initially saw nothing but the wide gate leading to what seemed like the side of the owner's house. The dim light from the pit barely outlined the gated fence. After my eyes adjusted, I saw a figure standing completely still. It was so still that I first thought it was another static prop. My young mind didn't register the oddity of the situation yet, and I was still trying to find the source of the voice. After a few moments, I heard the voice again, realizing it came from the figure. I started approaching the figure cautiously, trying to make sense of it all. It was a stupid idea, but given the craziness around me, this figure didn't seem intimidating at first. As I got closer, the figure suddenly moved, and I saw just enough light to make out his features. He was a scraggly, rough-looking man with a coarse gray beard and yellowed teeth. His clothes were weathered and tattered, as if he hadn't cleaned them in ages. He was smiling at me, and I had no idea why, but it sent shivers down my spine. Under the eerie light, it struck me that this man clearly didn't belong as part of the show, especially since I had seen the house owners. A sense of unease washed over me, and I screamed, running out of there as fast as I could to the exit. I didn't dare look back. Once I reached my parents waiting outside, I immediately told them about the man I saw. One of the owners approached and asked if everything was okay. I mentioned that I didn't like the old man by the gate. He looked at me for a moment and asked, "What man?" After that, I never went back to that place again. The unsettling incident I'm about to describe occurred on Halloween in 2005. My daughter and I were out trick-or-treating in our neighborhood around 8:30 in the evening, just as most other trick-or-treaters were venturing out. We were going from house to house, filling up a pillowcase with Halloween goodies. As the night progressed, we decided to explore a part of the street we hadn't visited before. The neighborhood was bustling with parents, kids, and teenagers. They all seemed drawn to a particular house down the street, which was captivatingly decorated for Halloween. This house, in the distance, appeared relatively distant, but it was adorned with Halloween decorations that made it unmistakably a haunted house. My daughter, who was 10 years old at the time, couldn't contain her excitement when she spotted it. She was absolutely thrilled, so I agreed to take her there. We hit a few houses on the way, but she was so eager to get to the haunted house that we ended up skipping most of the others. Finally, we reached the house, a single-story, white-painted residence with no cars in the driveway. It was decked out with black tarps taped to two 10-foot ladders, creating a tunnel that extended down the driveway. The house was adorned with fake spider webs, skeletons, zombies, and all manner of eerie Halloween decorations scattered around the front yard. We ventured into the tunnel, and my daughter led the way into the house. The tunnel was expertly crafted, complete with smoke machines to create a spooky atmosphere as you walked through it. The person responsible for this setup also had creepy music playing throughout the house. Once we emerged from the tunnel, we found ourselves in the living room, which appeared quite normal. However, there were fake skeletons on the couch, positioned to look at anyone entering through the tunnel. My daughter played along, acting scared while chuckling as she entered the next part of the haunted house. The journey continued with another tunnel, which seemed to lead to the dining room. The place was teeming with teenagers rushing about. I waited for about 10 seconds before entering the same tunnel as my daughter. The moment I did, I had an unsettling realization. My daughter was gone. I assumed she must have run ahead. I rushed through the tunnel and indeed ended up in the dining room. There, a mummy sat on the table, surrounded by a vampire and a werewolf decoration. But my daughter was nowhere to be found, so I ventured into yet another black tarp tunnel, surrounded by smoke. They must have had several smoke machines working simultaneously. I hurried through this third tunnel and found myself back outside right at the front door. I looked around but couldn't spot my daughter. Worried, I stepped out to the street and scanned the area, but my daughter, dressed as a pink rabbit, was conspicuously absent. Despite calling her name and receiving no response, I couldn't see her. Panic began to set in, and I thought she might have decided to re-enter the haunted house for a second go. I made my way back to the first tunnel entrance, passing through it as quickly as I could. In the living room, I called her name again, but louder, growing increasingly anxious and impatient. Just after I did that, I heard her voice. It sounded like it came from the first or second tunnel, so I ventured back into it, calling her name once more. This time I heard her say, "Daddy." Her voice was odd, as if someone had stifled it, and it seemed to come from right next to me. I reached out through the tarp and felt a doorknob. At that moment, the top part of the door broke into two pieces, held together with tape. I pulled them apart and opened the bedroom door right in front of me. The room was dark, but I could still make out the figures inside. An older man and a teenage boy were holding my daughter by the arms, with the teen covering her mouth. This was far from what I had expected, and my immediate reaction was to say, "What the hell? Let her go now." They complied instantly, and my daughter ran into my arms. I told her to run out to the street, which she did, now in tears. I fixed my gaze on the older man, and something about his eyes sent shivers down my spine. They had a sinister look. I warned them, "Don't ever touch her again. I'm calling the police right now, you sick individuals. Is this your house? Don't move." I contacted the police, explaining that these two individuals had laid hands on my daughter and attempted to hold her against her will in their house. I ventured back outside and noted the house's address, providing it to the police. We were all back inside the haunted house, insisting on speaking to the homeowner. After about 30 minutes of inquiries, we finally located a woman who claimed to own the house and all its decorations. We asked her about the two men, and she appeared genuinely baffled and disturbed by what we told her. She explained that she lived there with her two teenage daughters, and she had no knowledge of the older man and teenager we had encountered. Those two mysterious individuals were never found. Hello, everyone. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful or entertaining, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Your support motivates us to create more content you'll love. Thanks a million. And if you've just subscribed, please drop a comment saying I subscribed. We'd love to welcome you to our community.